Today, we are digging into a stack of research that, frankly, really challenges the whole myth of perfectionism.
It really does.
Our mission here is to dissect the hidden cost of demanding flawlessness and to understand why the people our sources call the imperfectionists, well, why they're often the ones who find real, sustainable success.
Right. And historically, we've always measured achievement by looking at the final perfect product, that old zero defect mentality. But the sources are just so clear. This is a huge strategic impediment to growth.
So we need a mindset shift.
A big one. We need to move away from judging, the height of the peak reached and instead start measuring the distance traveled.
That completely changes the conversation.
Okay.
Okay, so let's unpack the psychological trap here. The sources define this unrelenting desire for zero defects as stemming from deficit thinking.
Deficit thinking.
Yeah, so it's not about positive ambition. It's more, it's a deep-seated feeling of being inherently flawed.
And that feeling compels you to chase this idealized version of success just to feel, adequate? It's exhausting.
As it's limiting. And that deficit, I guess, it fuels three major cognitive errors that actively get in the way of growth.
It does.
So the first error the sources highlight is this obsession with trivial details. Perfectionists become what's described as time and resource-robbing thieves. They just fixate on minor details, and they can't separate the must-haves from the nice-to-haves.
It's the classic case of perfecting the font while the main argument is still weak.
Exactly.
It is the ultimate diminishing returns trap. They miss the forest for the trees because they are just terrified of the big, messy decisions where a real mistake might happen.
Which, that leads directly into the second error, right? The avoidance of the unfamiliar.
Yes. They just will not tackle difficult tasks where failure is, a real possibility, maybe even guaranteed. They can't handle what the sources call the unbearable awkwardness of learning.
If they can't be good at it instantly, they're out.
They're out. And that avoidance, coupled with the third error, which is harsh self-criticism, that is just a toxic combination.
How so?
Well, punishing every little mistake, it triggers this defensive high anxiety state. It actually makes it physiologically harder to learn.
And that can drive people into self-handicapping.
Exactly. Where they intentionally hold back effort just so they have an external excuse for an inevitable failure. It's all about protecting a fragile ego.
Wow. Okay, so that avoidance of risk brings up a huge question. If you're not willing to risk failure, can you ever really achieve mastery?
The data suggests, surprisingly, no.
Really?
Yeah. Look at the landmark 1962 IPAIR study. It looked at these hugely influential architects. We're talking people like Eero Saarinen, I.M. Pei.
The giants.
The giants, and the most creatively successful ones. They typically finish college with a B average.
Wait, a B average? You're saying a B average student is fundamentally better equipped for radical innovation than the straight A student. That feels so counterintuitive.
I know, but it's not about intelligence. It's about priority. They had what the study called spiky grades.
Spiky grades.
So A's in subjects that lit them up and, minimal effort in the ones that didn't. They were reserving their energy for what they were passionate about. It's a skill that's far more valuable than just blind compliance.
So their perfectionist classmates had the gleaming grades, but they built fewer transformative projects.
Far fewer. And we see the same pattern with artists. 2/3 of world-class sculptors. They finished high school with B's and C's.
So these individual errors, they must scale up dramatically when a perfectionist ends up in charge. How does this translate to an organization?
Oh, a perfectionist leader almost immediately becomes an organizational bottleneck. They micromanage everything. They suppress innovation because they see any mistake from their team as a personal failure.
It kills psychological safety.
Completely. And what's so fascinating here is the antidote the sources propose. Imperfect leadership.
Which means?
It means you have to publicly admit your own limitations. You have to act as a servant leader and just acknowledge that you are also an unfinished product.
That immediately removes the perfection barrier for everyone else.
It does. You have to become a human sponge, proactively seeking out advice for actual growth, not just to feed your ego.
And what about structurally? So sources suggest moving away from traditional brainstorming.
Precisely. Because brainstorming often just rewards the loudest voice in the room. Instead, they suggest adopting brainwriting.
So ideas are generated individually and submitted anonymously.
Exactly. It separates the quality of the concept from the ego of the person presenting it. You leverage everyone's intelligence because you've removed the fear of judgment.
Ultimately, then, what we're aiming for is excellence seeking imperfectionism.
Hmm.
The true measure isn't your starting point, but the distance traveled.
Right. It proves that character skills like resilience can overcome systemic barriers. The Raging Rook's chess team is a perfect example. They didn't have the highest starting scores.
But they learned intensely from every single loss. They prioritized growth over a flawless record.
And they won. So here's a final provocative thought for you to explore. The sources talk about the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, the art of honoring beauty in imperfection.
Hmm.
So how can embracing the inherent limitations in your own work or in your team's process rather than fighting them, how could that actually lead to greater durability and, maybe even more celebrated creative results?